The atmosphere within the pristine, glass-walled corridors of Forrester Creations is thick with an almost suffocating tension, a palpable dread that hangs heavy in the air like the calm before a devastating hurricane. Monday's episode of our beloved daytime drama plunges us directly into the chaotic, messy, and deeply emotional aftermath of a decision that has fundamentally fractured the delicate ecosystem of this legendary fashion dynasty. The weekend may have provided a brief, fleeting respite from the corporate warfare, but as the sun rises over the sprawling Los Angeles skyline, the harsh, unforgiving reality of the situation comes crashing down. The executive suite, usually a place of refined elegance and creative innovation, has been transformed into a brutal battlefield where loyalties are tested, egos are bruised, and familial bonds are stretched to their absolute breaking point. At the very epicenter of this swirling vortex of corporate and familial chaos stands Ridge Forrester, a man who has spent his entire life desperately trying to balance the impossible demands of the fiercely independent women he loves. Ridge is a visionary artist, a master of haute couture who finds solace in the graceful sweep of a sketchpad and the delicate drape of fine silk. Yet, he is continually forced into the agonizing, soul-crushing role of a corporate peacemaker, a position he is woefully ill-equipped to handle. Last week, under immense, unyielding pressure, Ridge made a fateful choice. He caved to the uncompromising demands of his daughter, Steffy, denying his beloved wife, Brooke Logan, the co-CEO position she so fiercely desires. He attempted to soften the crushing blow with a pathetic, deeply misguided peace offering, an original couture dress, a beautiful but ultimately hollow gesture that only served to insult Brooke's intelligence and burning ambition. Now, the catastrophic fallout of that cowardice has arrived, and Ridge is left scrambling in a state of sheer, unadulterated panic. To truly understand the depth of Ridge's current despair, one must delve into the complex, deeply rooted psychological history of the Forrester patriarch. For decades, Ridge has been the ultimate prize in a never-ending tug-of-war, first between his formidable mother Stephanie and Brooke, and now between his headstrong daughter and his ambitious wife. He suffers from a chronic, debilitating inability to make a definitive choice without attempting to appease the losing party. This inherent weakness, this desperate need to be the hero to everyone, has ultimately made him the villain in his own narrative. As Monday's episode unfolds, we witness a man drowning in the severe consequences of his own passive-aggressive leadership. He paces the floor of the CEO office, his handsome features etched with deep lines of worry and regret, his mind racing as he tries to formulate a strategy to contain the massive explosion he has inadvertently detonated. He knows that Brooke is radicalized, furious, and entirely unsatisfied by his attempts to placate her with fabric and thread. He knows that he has not solved the problem. He has merely delayed the inevitable, bloody confrontation. Ridge's desperate attempts at damage control are both agonizing and fascinating to watch. He is a man frantically trying to plug the holes in a sinking ship with his bare hands. He makes urgent phone calls, he attempts to smooth ruffled feathers, and he desperately tries to intercept the impending collision between Brooke and Steffi in the main lobby of the Forrester building. Every move he makes is meticulously calculated to minimize the collateral damage, yet every action only seems to highlight his fundamental failure as a decisive leader and a supportive husband. He is terrified of the wrath of the Logan matriarch, knowing full well that Brooke, when pushed to the absolute brink, is a formidable, unstoppable force of nature. He is equally terrified of alienating his daughter, the fierce, uncompromising protector of the Forrester legacy. Ridge is trapped in a psychological prison of his own making, a gilded cage where every word is heavily scrutinized and every decision carries the immense weight of a potential family-destroying war. The viewers can feel his desperation radiating through the screen, a testament to the high stakes of this corporate melodrama. While Ridge is entirely consumed by his frantic, ultimately futile efforts to maintain a fragile, superficial peace, Steffi Forrester Finnegan is about to experience a profound, earth-shattering reality check. Steffi has spent the past several weeks operating under the dangerous, intoxicating illusion of absolute, unquestionable victory. She successfully halted the Hope for the Future line, relegating Hope Logan to the humiliating status of a subordinate designer, and she successfully intimidated her father into protecting her exclusive claim to the co-CEO throne. Steffy has been parading through the halls of her family's company with the smug, arrogant confidence of a conquering queen, utterly convinced that she has permanently vanquished the looming Logan threat. She believes that her iron-fisted rule is unassailable, that her father's recent capitulation was a definitive, permanent validation of her supreme authority over the fashion house. However, Monday's episode delivers a brutal, shocking awakening for the young Forrester matriarch. Steffy is completely, utterly blindsided by the sheer magnitude of the catastrophic mess her father has created. She is rarely caught off guard. She prides herself on her strategic brilliance, her ability to anticipate her enemies' moves, and her ruthless efficiency in neutralizing any perceived threats. But the fallout from Ridge's pathetic attempts to appease Brooke hits Steffy like a runaway freight train. The illusion of her total victory shatters into a million jagged pieces as she realizes that Ridge's decision was not a clean, decisive strike, but a messy, convoluted compromise that has left the heavy, ornate doors of Forrester Creations wide open for further rebellion. The realization that her father is actively trying to mitigate the damage and play both sides, rather than standing firmly and exclusively by her side, is a profound psychological blow that shakes her to her very core. The performance delivered by Jacqueline MacInnes Wood in these pivotal scenes is nothing short of a masterclass in daytime television acting. The rapid micro-expressions that flit across her face, the initial confusion, the dawning realization of betrayal, and the sudden, volcanic eruption of pure, unadulterated fury are absolutely mesmerizing to behold. Steffy's initial shock quickly morphs into a cold, calculating anger. She is incensed that her father would dare to undermine her authority in such a cowardly manner, that he would allow the lingering, toxic specter of Brooke's ambition to cast a dark shadow over her hard-won empire. Steffy refuses to be a silent victim of her father's chronic indecision. If Ridge cannot clean up the catastrophic mess he has made, Steffy will take matters into her own capable, ruthless hands. She squares her shoulders, her dark eyes flashing with a dangerous, predatory light, and prepares to confront the man who has simultaneously empowered her and betrayed her trust. The impending confrontation between Ridge and Steffy serves as the emotional anchor of Monday's episode, a high-stakes, breathless showdown that crackles with an intensity that threatens to scorch the very screen. This is not merely a polite disagreement over corporate policy or quarterly projections. This is a deeply personal, fiercely emotional battle for the very soul of Forrester Creations and the fundamental definition of their family dynamic. When Steffy finally corners her father, the air in the room turns instantly frigid. The dialogue is sharp, biting, and heavily laden with decades of unresolved resentment and unspoken grievances. Steffy demands absolute loyalty, an unwavering commitment to the Forrester name and the magnificent legacy that her grandfather Eric built from the ground up. She views Ridge's pathetic attempts to placate Brooke as a fundamental betrayal, a glaring sign of weakness that endangers everything she has fought so desperately to protect. Ridge, caught squarely in the terrifying crosshairs of his daughter's righteous indignation, attempts to defend his entirely indefensible actions. He pleads for understanding and compassion, utilizing his trademark charm and his deep, resonant voice to try and soothe the savage beast he has inadvertently awakened. He passionately argues that he is merely trying to keep their fractured family together, that a total, unmitigated war with the Logans will only result in mutually assured destruction for everyone involved. But his desperate words ring entirely hollow, echoing uselessly against the impenetrable, steel armor of Steffy's absolute certainty. Torsten K. brilliantly conveys the deep exhaustion and the quiet, agonizing desperation of a man who realizes he has completely lost control of the narrative. The shifting power dynamics between father and daughter are stark, undeniable, and utterly fascinating. Steffy is no longer the little girl seeking her father's approval. She is a formidable corporate titan demanding his total submission. The consequences of Ridge's choices are no longer abstract possibilities. They are a harsh, unforgiving reality staring him directly in the face. Meanwhile, far removed from the opulent, high-altitude warfare of the executive suites, a different, far more insidious kind of drama is unfolding in the bustling, creative sanctuary of the design office. Here, amidst the colorful swatches of vibrant fabric and the frantic, rhythmic hum of sewing machines, Melissa Dillon is fighting a desperate, terrifying battle for her own psychological survival. Dillon has been living in a state of constant, suffocating anxiety, haunted by the sudden, terrifying reappearance of her cousin, Remy Price. Remy is a dark, malevolent shadow from her past, a manipulative predator who has infiltrated the safe haven of Forrester Creations with a sinister, extortionist agenda. Dillon knows the horrifying truth about Remy. She knows that he is the cruel architect of the malicious deepfakes that utterly destroyed Electra Forrester's mental health. She knows that if this toxic, explosive secret is ever exposed, it will not only shatter her newly mended friendship with Electra, but also obliterate her career and her entire future in Los Angeles. The severe psychological toll of carrying this dark, burdensome secret is written plainly on Dillon's face, etched into the dark circles under her eyes and the nervous tremor in her hands. She is a young woman pushed to the absolute brink, cornered by a ruthless blackmailer who demands her complicity in his twisted, self-serving games. Monday's episode brings this agonizing, claustrophobic storyline to a crucial, heart-stopping turning point. Dillon has made her desires explicitly clear. She has begged, pleaded, and firmly demanded that Remy respect her wishes, that he leave her alone, and that he stay far, far away from Electra and the rest of the Forrester family. But Remy, with his characteristic, sociopathic arrogance, completely ignores her desperate pleas. He views Dillon not as a family member to be respected, but as a weak, vulnerable pawn to be exploited for his own amusement and gain. He hovers in her orbit, a constant, terrifying reminder that her safety is merely a fragile illusion and that her world could come crashing down at any given moment. Just as Dillon feels the suffocating, icy grip of panic closing tightly around her throat, just as she is about to succumb to the overwhelming, crushing pressure of Remy's relentless psychological torment, a sudden, unexpected intervention changes the entire trajectory of the narrative. Someone steps boldly into the fray, acting as a crucial, protective shield between the terrified young woman and her relentless tormentor. This intervention is a moment of profound, cathartic relief, a sudden burst of brilliant light in the suffocating darkness of Dillon's predicament. The defender does not mince words. They confront Remy with a fierce, unyielding authority, explicitly demanding that he respect Dillon's boundaries and immediately cease his relentless harassment. The lines are drawn firmly in the sand, clear, sharp, and entirely undeniable. The dynamic in the room shifts instantly from a predator-prey scenario to a standoff between equals. The impact of this fierce confrontation is immediate, electrifying, and deeply emotional. For the first time since Remy slithered back into her life, Dillon is not standing alone against the darkness. The presence of a strong ally, someone willing to look the predator directly in the eye and tell him to back down, provides Dillon with a desperately needed surge of courage and validation. The defender's words are a sharp, piercing rebuke to Remy's entitled arrogance, a clear, unmistakable signal that his manipulative tactics will no longer go unchallenged in the halls of Forrester Creations. The tension in the room is thick enough to cut with a knife, a silent, psychological standoff between the forces of protection and the forces of exploitation. Remy, momentarily taken aback by this sudden, forceful resistance, is forced to recalculate his sinister strategy, his dark eyes narrowing as he assesses this new, unexpected obstacle in his path. The stakes of this confrontation are astronomically high, amplified by the terrifying, ever-present threat of discovery. Electra Forrester, the innocent, traumatized victim of Remy's past atrocities, is hovering precariously close to the epicenter of this conflict. Every single second that Remy remains in the building is a second that risks a catastrophic, world-shattering revelation. Dylan is acutely, painfully aware that if Electra were to walk around the corner, if she were to lay eyes on the man who tormented her to the brink of despair, the fragile peace they have managed to build would instantly vaporize into dust. The Defender's intervention is not just about protecting Dylan from workplace harassment. It is about preventing a massive, psychological explosion that would send devastating shockwaves through the entire Forrester family. The delicate, terrifying dance of keeping Remy hidden while simultaneously trying to banish him creates a masterclass in suspenseful, edge-of-your-seat storytelling that leaves the audience breathless. The burning, agonizing question that lingers in the heavy aftermath of this fierce intervention is whether Remy Price will actually listen. Will this sociopathic manipulator heed the stern warnings and retreat into the shadows from whence he came, or will this sudden resistance only serve to inflame his vindictive, obsessive nature? History strongly suggests that a man like Remy does not simply walk away when his authority is challenged. Rather, he regroups and plots a more devastating counterattack. The Forrester sisters, along with everyone else who has a vested interest in the stability of the company, will be watching this situation with a hawk-like vigilance. The boundaries have been drawn, the severe warnings have been issued, but the true test of this confrontation will unfold in the tense days to come. Dylan has finally received the support she so desperately needed, but the brutal war for her freedom and her sanity is far from over. As we analyze the deeply intertwined, emotionally resonant narratives of Monday's episode, a profound, overarching theme begins to emerge: the devastating, inescapable consequences of choices made in fear. Ridge Forrester chose to appease his daughter out of a desperate, cowardly fear of conflict, and in doing so, he has ignited a corporate inferno that threatens to consume everything he holds dear. Melissa Dillon chose to keep her toxic connection to Remy a secret out of a paralyzing fear of losing her job and her friends, and that silence has allowed a predator to infiltrate her safe haven. Both of these complex characters are now trapped in the suffocating, terrifying aftermath of their own decisions, forced to confront the harsh, unyielding reality that avoidance is never a sustainable strategy. The bill has finally come due, and the cost of their fear is going to be astronomically high. The events of Monday serve as a powerful, explosive catalyst for the rest of the week, setting the grand stage for a series of dramatic, life-altering confrontations. Ridge's frantic, desperate attempts at damage control will undoubtedly fail to contain the volcanic rage of Brooke Logan, who is meticulously plotting her hostile takeover with the strategic guidance of a newly radicalized Hope. Steffy's realization that her father is a compromised, unreliable ally will only harden her resolve, pushing her to adopt even more ruthless, uncompromising tactics to secure her absolute power. And the fragile, terrifying standoff between Dylan, Remy, and her newfound defender is a ticking time bomb, counting down to the inevitable, catastrophic moment when Electra discovers the horrifying truth about the monsters lurking in her own workplace. In conclusion, Monday's episode of The Bold and the Beautiful is a breathtaking, emotionally exhausting journey into the darkest, most vulnerable corners of the human psyche. It is an episode that brilliantly showcases the incredible talents of this legendary cast, providing them with rich, complex material that they execute with absolute perfection. From the high-altitude corporate warfare of the executive suites to the terrifying, intimate psychological manipulation in the design office, every single scene is fraught with tension, profound meaning, and devastating consequences. The fallout has officially arrived, the damage is done, and the landscape of Los Angeles fashion will never be the same again. As we brace ourselves for the chaotic, unpredictable events that will undoubtedly unfold in the coming days, we are left to ponder the monumental questions raised by this explosive hour of television. How far will Ridge Forrester go to protect his fragile, crumbling empire? What ruthless, devastating moves will Steffy make now that the illusion of her absolute victory has been shattered? And who will ultimately pay the highest price in the terrifying, high-stakes game of psychological warfare being waged by Remy Price? The drama is escalating, the stakes have never been higher, and we will be right here to dissect, analyze, and celebrate every single jaw-dropping moment. Whose mess do you think will dominate the headlines for the rest of the week? Let us know your boldest theories and hottest takes in the comments below, and you might just see your name featured.